In August last year, the control room at General Atomics had something to celebrate. They generated their plasma shot number 200,000. That's an experimental fusion of hydrogen atoms you smash together to generate the heat you need to produce energy. David Pace is deputy director of the fusion facility run by General Atomics.
With fusion, what we're going to do, we're going to take two particles, and if you smash them together hard enough, they release net energy. And that's what we do. We want to smash together a lot of particles and make a lot of energy.
Nuclear fusion is what happens on the sun. The process leaves behind helium and energy, and none of that long-lasting nuclear waste that has bedeviled its scientific cousin, the nuclear fission power plant. Richard Buttery is the director of General Atomics' D3D fusion reactor, which is funded by the Department of Energy. He said the promise of exploiting fusion on Earth is a virtually limitless supply of energy.
Because the fuel we have for fusion is abundant around the world. The deuterium, that's one type of hydrogen that we use. You just extract that from seawater. The other fuel that we want to use, lithium, is something you can pull out the ground. It's common. It's in your cell phone batteries. And the amounts you need to do a lot of energy is very small.
The quest for fusion energy has been a long haul. Scientists have been pursuing it since the Second World War, and some of the testing infrastructure is pretty old school. At General Atomics, the fusion reactor is called a tokamak, a technology that's been around since the 1960s. Originally developed by the Russians, the so-called tokamak is a donut-shaped oven that conducts the intense heat needed for fusion. Powerful magnets are used to control the energy. But with all the progress that's been seen, we still don't have the technology to contain and release fusion energy, so it can boil water, run a turbine, and generate power. Pace says the challenge now is turning the science into a fusion power plant.
We have a piece of science that we understand really, really well, but now we have to fold that into a physical device that takes it to the next step, that gets you closer to producing electricity. And it's really this integration and this full system approach that is just an incredibly challenging problem.
He says the industry still needs research and development. The development of materials like the steel that go inside the reactor that doesn't unexpectedly erode or emit particles important to fusion. A possible answer to this challenging problem is taking shape in France, an international project called ITER, which is Latin for the way. It is a tokamak-powered facility that will be the closest thing the world has seen to a fusion power plant. Its goal is to get fusion to continue in the reactor under its own heat and power, not relying on the kind of imported heat needed for a brief plasma shot. Buttery says ITER's goal is to produce 10 times the energy it gets from an outside heating source. This year, General Atomics will ship to ITER a magnet to contain its superhot ball of gas. And Buttery says this is going to be the world's biggest magnet.
Just to give you one stat here, this is a magnet that is so powerful that it could lift an aircraft carrier out of the water.
Scientific work on fusion energy has gone on for so long you have to forgive people for casting doubt when they hear somebody say, "We're almost there." Innovation and public policy professor David Victor co-directs UC San Diego's Energy Decarbonization Initiative. He says the old joke about fusion is it's the great energy source of the future, and it always will be. But he does believe that recent progress toward the goal is no joke.
There are a lot of improvements in technologies that make several different strategies for fusion energy at least seem a lot more plausible than they did even 5 or 10 years ago. New kinds of lasers, and in particular, new kinds of magnets, really, really powerful magnets that can confine a fusion plasma.
But he says every new energy source has uncertainties, and as we consider fusion, don't forget the potential of wind and solar. Even nuclear fission may have a future if the industry can build small modular units. Meanwhile, Buttery says private sector investment in fusion in the U.S. has increased hugely, from venture capitalists to philanthropic groups.
At the government level, the United States is investing strongly in fusion, and so are our competitors. China is actually outspending the United States by a factor of 2 in its government funding.
Buttery says with increased investment, people in the fusion field believe we will have fusion power plants sometime in the 2030s. If that does happen, the question of whether you can draw power from one of them may depend on where you live. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.